What sense did you get of these two leaders as they were talking there?
Well, of course, at the moment, this is very much all about stage management. This is the joint appearance before the cameras. They're then going to go for lunch a bit later on. We expect some kind of agreement and, again, a press conference, and we'll get more details about what they have agreed. Reports say that the officials didn't get very far with agreeing anything on denuclearisation or on sanctions, for instance, before they went into the summit. So it's up to the two leaders to improvise. But that's very much about theatre, isn't it? Two completely contrasting countries and contrasting leaders. It's the first time we've heard quite so much North Korean in the flesh, I think. It's the first time that Kim Jong-un is said to have really taken questions from foreign journalists. So just
of course, he doesn't have to deal with that in North Korea.
He doesn't have to deal with that in North Korea. And for the Singapore summit, the public were kept in the dark about the summit itself until it had happened. Whereas this time, they're being told that their great leader is on the world stage. And that, of course, goes to the heart of it. And this is the heart of the criticism. Donald Trump has described Kim Jong-un as, again, a great leader. And let's face it, he is a brutal dictator behind the perhaps slightly comic book image that we tend to portray sometimes. North Korea has perhaps the worst human rights record in the world. And of course, that is a criticism from human rights groups that that issue is not being addressed here. It's all about sanctions and denuclearisation. I think in some of the comments that they've made, they're reflecting some of the low expectations, if you like. Donald Trump in particular, whereas before he said we're going to go full steam ahead now towards denuclearisation. That was after Singapore. Now it's very much there's no rush. And he again said that he's quite happy just to have had a pause in nuclear testing. I think we can hear from him, actually, because he was asked about this issue of denuclearisation and the pace of progress. This is what the US president had to say.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Perhaps we don't have that.
I think we may not have that clip from Donald Trump, but we did hear it. And in it, he says, essentially, I appreciate that there's been no nuclear testing since the end of 2017.
Yes. He said, speed is not important. I very much appreciate the no testing of nuclear rockets or missiles before going on to say we just want to do the right deal. His words echoed by the North Korean leader, who said he's not pessimistic about the outcome of the talks, but he did say that they've made lots of efforts so far. I think we can hear from the North Korean leader. Let's hear what he had to say when he was asked about whether he was optimistic that the summit could actually bring something concrete at the end of it.
Well, it's too early to tell. But I wouldn't say that I'm pessimistic.
All right, well, there we were hearing from Kim Jong-un. They're very short and sweet. But, I mean, not pessimistic, that doesn't still mean optimistic, does it?
No, I think it reflects the feeling overall now that no one's expecting a great kind of breakthrough, whereas we had aspirations come out of the joint declaration after Singapore. Now perhaps we're looking for some kind of beginnings of a roadmap to the path ahead. And some concrete steps, because obviously what the Americans are looking for is steps towards getting rid of nuclear weapons on the Korean peninsula. And for the North Koreans, they want some easing of sanctions. So at the moment, of course, we just have speculation as to what concrete steps may come out.
And of course, both of these leaders really need to take home these concrete measures. Otherwise, this is just going to be seen as a repeat of the meeting that they had last June. I mean, we even had Pompeo before this summit laying the groundwork for the need potentially for a third summit. So, as you say, these expectations certainly being lowered across the board. Let's look at what we do know about what's going to happen over the next sort of few hours. They've got a packed agenda, so let's just talk through that. What we do know is going to happen.
Yes, well, they're having lunch. The talks are ongoing at the Metropole Hotel in Hanoi. They're going to have lunch and then some sort of a series of meetings between officials, and then some kind of agreement is expected with a signing ceremony. As to what's in that, we'll have to wait and see, but the informed comment seems to suggest there may be perhaps from the Americans a political statement about the end of the Korean War. and something from the North Koreans pointing towards concrete steps towards at least partial denuclearisation. There's suggestions that perhaps inspectors may be allowed in to observe the dismantling of the Yongbyon nuclear facility. But as I say, we're going to have to wait and see that. You were saying who's needs to get more out of it. Arguably Donald Trump, of course, under a lot of pressure at home halfway through his presidency, and we saw the testimony from Michael Cohen yesterday, which was, as expected, not mincing his words as far as his former client was concerned, calling him a con and a cheat and a liar. That said, plenty of Republicans are rallying around Donald Trump and accusing Michael Cohen of being exactly the same thing. But having taken the risk of going that far to set up this summit and making the case that whereas previous US administrations have always failed and US policy has got nowhere with North Korea, and here he is having tamed the North Korean tiger, if you like, there is some pressure on Donald Trump, of course, to achieve concrete steps now, although, as he keeps saying, and to be fair, it is a very different situation compared to 2 years ago when there were real fears about the extent of the missile testing. That has stopped, so there is at least a pause, and there does seem to be this obvious thaw in relations, and obviously, at least for the cameras, a very warm relationship between the two being portrayed to the world's media.